Welcome and hello. Today we'll dive into the scorching world of Fire Force in a series I'll call Make It Make Sense, where we'll explore, explain, and scientifically validate the fascinating ignition abilities seen in the power-based power system. Starting with one of the most intriguing characters, Sho Kusakabe. I'll break down his power in the anime, delve into the science behind it, and explain why it makes sense and is plausible within the unique system centered around fire. It's important to also note that Fire Force's power system isn't just manipulating fire, it also involves heat and plasma manipulation. For instance, fire is a form of plasma, and the series also touches on bioelectricity, akin to lightning, which is another form of plasma, so keep this in mind for future videos. Now before we begin, let me give a brief rundown of Fire Force's power system. Starting with what is an ignition ability? An ignition ability is the unique way a pyrokinetic manipulates flames. Pyrokinetics are classified into three main generations, with a technical distinct fourth category. First, we have the first generation Pyrokinetics, also known as Infernos. These are humans who became victims of spontaneous human combustion and turned into uncontrollable flames. Next are second generation Pyrokinetics, who can manipulate existing flames but cannot generate their own flames. Then there are the third generation Pyrokinetics, who can generate and control their own flames, but unlike the second gen, can't manipulate flames that they didn't create. Lastly, the fourth generation Pyrokinetics, considered to be the strongest generation, their power comes from the connection to the Drawback, granting them extraordinary abilities. With these bases covered, we can now dive into Sho's abilities and make it make sense. As a third and fourth generation Pyrokinetic, Sho possesses the rare ability to manipulate flames with unparalleled control. Using his Dola Burst and his connection with the Evangelist, an otherworldly being. Through an Dola Burst, he received what is called an Dola Grace, giving the ignition ability Severed Universe. Sho's Grace technique, Severed Universe, decreases the natural heat of the ever-expanding universe to slow down the flow of time to a halt, while he remains at his normal speed. When in use, the Grace technique Severed Universe only lasts for 3 seconds within the span of a real-world setting. Now that I've introduced Sho's ability and highlighted his signature technique, I will now analyze the usage of Severed Universe in Sho's fighting style and examine his strategies. So when it comes to using his ignition ability, Sho uses Severed Universe to mainly cool the area around his body, greatly reducing the heat that causes the natural expansion of the universe and chills it. As a result, he can pause the flow of time. And of course, time does not slow down for Sho himself, as he remains at his normal speed. For example, if Sho slows time to a third of his normal speed, then things around Sho will appear to him as if they're moving 3 times slower, while Sho's opponents perceive him as moving 3 times faster. As a result, Sho's normal movement appears untraceably fast to his opponents, and they seem to move in slow motion from his perspective. This technique allows him to travel a short distance and strike under a second, giving him advantage over most opponents. However, though Severed Universe may have much potential, it also has limitations. These limitations affect Sho, as he is not invincible and can be vulnerable under certain circumstances, leading to his downfall and the failure to capacitate certain situations with Severed Universe. The first limitation being Severed Universe requires chilling the surrounding area to such a low temperature that Sho's body begins to freeze after short usage. This forces Sho to avoid using it to an extended period and must be deactivated to thaw out the ice forming on his body. This ice almost instantly becomes steam upon contact with normal warm air, which can serve as a clue to understand the mechanics of his ability. Next, the second limitation, though very rare, is objects moving at a speed that defies the law of physics, that can bypass Severed Universe, as time at any speed cannot affect them or their movement. If a light speed attack launches before or during the Severed Universe usage, its instant effect will happen regardless of how time is being manipulated, as something moving at light speed would still travel at the same speed relative to any normal frame reference, as severed universe itself only dilates time but doesn't completely stop it. Finally, as a 4th generation ability, severed universe is normally required a connection to the Evangelist to function. And if the Evangelist breaks this connection, severed universe cannot be activated. However, this would change towards the end of the series, but this limitation is still a great detriment to Sho using severed universe. Now that we understand Sho's initial ability, how he uses it, and his potential and limitations, let's dive into the science behind how it works and why it makes sense in the Water Fire Force, and to an extent, ours. When it comes to understanding the scientific principles and explanation behind the phenomena around Sho's initial ability, it helps us to appreciate the creativity and plausibility of the powers within Fire Force's universe. Sho's ability, while fantastical, is grounded in real scientific concepts, making it a fascinating aspect of the series to explore. In simpler terms, Sho Kusakabe's initial ability in Fire Force Severed Universe operates in a manner that can be compared to the combination of heat transfer from atoms and a state change of atoms, shifting from a more fluid state to a more rigid, frozen state by removing heat. Sho's ability revolves around controlling thermal energy, aka heat, to manipulate the flow of movement and not actually stopping or dilating time in his surroundings, which is tied to how temperature affects atomic motion. So knowing how his power works, let's get in depth scientifically and reveal how it relates to his ability, Severed Universe. I'll first talk about atoms and heat manipulation in the aspect of how they relate to Severed Universe's usage, and next the time-stopping effect in the aspect of atomic movement and its visuals. Then finally how both contribute to Severed Universe's drawback, aka cold exposure. With that, let's begin. First up, we have atoms and heat manipulation. In physics, heat is a form of energy associated with atoms' movement and motion. The harder something is, the faster the atoms vibrate. However, when heat is removed from a system, atoms slow down, and as you approach absolute zero, atoms barely move at all. This freezing or slowing of atomic motion is similar to what Sho achieves with Severed Universe. By draining heat from his surroundings, in exchange, he slows down atomic motion to such an extent that time seems to slow down or stop for everything around him as he removes heat, and since heat is directly tied to the kinetic energy of particles, atoms lose energy drastically, slowing down nearly to a standstill. As for the time-stopping effect, in a sense, Sho's ability is like shifting from a liquid to a solid state. Since moving heat essentially pushes atoms to a slow energy state, causing them to freeze or slow down, in Sho's case, this pushes this idea to the extreme with Severed Universe. But instead of merely solidifying substance, he is freezing time itself by halting atomic motion entirely. So time appears to stop from Sho's perspective. In reality, Sho is moving at normal speed, while for everyone time has stopped. This means that he can react, attack, and perform actions while everyone else is effectively frozen or slowing down due to the rigidness of atoms around him that lost their energy. This creates the illusion that time has stopped because of the lost heat. However, this leads to my third point. Like I mentioned before, using this power comes at a cost, which being cold exposure. Since Sho is manipulating heat and effectively draining it from his environment, he begins to suffer from the effects of extreme cold. This plays into the drawback of Severed Universe, since if he uses his ability for too long or spams it, leads to serious harm the more his body suffers from the lack of thermal energy, causing freezing effects like frostbite, hypothermia, and even ice forming on his body, and he risks freezing himself. So prolonged use makes it a dangerous double-edged sword. In conclusion, the key things to remember as I conclude are: first, Severed Universe decreases the natural heat of the ever-expanding universe to slow down the flow of time to a halt, while Sho remains at his normal speed. Also, its duration is 3 seconds within a time span of a real-world second. The second point is his weakness is suffering from the cold after prolonged use, objects or beings that move at light speed, and losing connection to Evangelist. Then the third point, Sho's ability is a fascinating mix of physics and time manipulation, tied directly to thermal energy and the motion of atoms. And lastly, to conclude, 4th generation Pyrokinetics get their original 3rd generation powers boosted by their double burst. Unlike other generations, their powers break or work around physics on a higher scale, as the double burst doesn't conform to the physical law of Earth, granting a tremendous boost of strength to a pyrokinetic who has one, and in some cases can even enhance their abilities to grant amazing powers that would be impossible even for pyrokinesis, which explains why their abilities don't always make sense in the power system of Fire Force, as they don't work around fire the way we expect. But that's why I'm here in the first place, to make it make sense. So overall, 4th generation Pyrokinetics are just 3rd generation Pyrokinetics on steroids, meaning all 4th generation are 3rd generation, but not all 3rd generation are 4th generation. And if I was to guess what Sho's original 3rd generation ability was, it would most likely have to do with removing heat from the area on a smaller scale compared to how he can with several universe, thanks to his double burst amping his abilities. Okay guys, that's all for today's exploration of Sho Kusakabe's abilities. What are your favorite aspects of Sho's abilities? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth content. Until next time, Latam.